All right, Purist, it's Bob Purist Motorsports. Today we're going to talk with Mark LaMaskin, like I said we would, to talk about Saleen purchasing, getting into the game. And there were two questions that really were the same all the way through. One, what's the best entry-level Saleen you can buy? Two, what are the hardest parts to find for a Saleen? Mark takes a moment to explain some of that and break it down into more generalities. So let's do this. In my last video about buying a Foxbody Saleen, I said we would talk to
Mark LaMaskin from Performance Autosport.
yes, and include him in the conversation.
He's already forgotten who I am.
Of course. I don't have anything to say to that.
No, good. It's a long ride home without getting any filming done.
True.
Yes.
Okay, I really like you. I'll buy you lunch. What do you want for dinner?
Exactly.
The values. And I asked people to chime in. What do you think? What questions do you have? And there were a couple of, I guess, throughout they were the same in different verbiage. But one, entry-level Saleen, which I know you get asked a lot. What's the best entry-level Saleen?
It's really hard to answer that question because Saleen had so many different models and variants. It depends on what body style that you want. The key piece of advice I always try to give people is buy the most expensive car that you can afford that's the most complete. Also get the most education possible so you know when you're looking at the car what parts are right and what parts are wrong. I can't tell you the amount of times I've had people that have bought cars without sending me pictures or calling me or you or other people and saying, look what I bought. And you're like, oh, okay. And then you're sort of stuck because you don't really want to upset them and say, by the way, the car's got the wrong seats, it's got the wrong wheels, it's got all these things. What'd you get the car for? And they thought they got a good deal, and in the long run, they didn't get a good deal.
Yeah, and I mentioned that before, and that you gotta be knowledgeable of your purchase. Get involved with the community, ask some questions, and don't be afraid to, because there are a lot of knowledgeable people out there. Know what you're buying, because you can get into it and think, okay, I got a good deal, like you said, and then you find out all these pieces are missing when you could have waited. And the cost of getting all the right pieces exceeds what a nicer vehicle.
I always tell people, remember the mechanical aspect of the car. It's still basically a Mustang. So all the mechanicals to fix don't cost any more money than it does for a GT Mustang of that era, unless obviously it's a supercharged model.
Right.
But it's the seats, it's the wheels, and some of these things like other cars, parts got thrown away, they got put on other cars, and they're getting super expensive to buy. And a car, at least some of the times you can go to a bank or a credit union and borrow money. The parts, if you're sitting at Carlisle and the guy's got the parts you need in front of you, you're not going to negotiate with him and give him a credit card most of the time. You need to hand him green money. So it can drag that restoration out many, many, many years. I've had a lot of people that have called me after they're done with the car and said, I should have listened to you. I should have bought the car that was, let's say back in the day, $15,000, but I bought the $10,000 car. Now I've got $19,000 in a car that wasn't as nice as the car I could have bought for $15,000.
And that's true with the same thing. I guess a point to that is that with my Almost 4 project, the reason it took so long, one, financial for me, affording it when I could. The other is I wanted all the correct parts, and it literally took about 8.5 years to gather everything that would be correct for that car, which is an SA10. Obviously, there's some select parts in there, but that's an example of it takes a long time. Like, that's just part of the process if you're buying one. Which, if that's what you can afford and you're capable of doing that and coming out good on the back end, if you're able to turn around, where you do paint, you do body, that's great. But you got to consider all of that on the front end of the purchase. I think that the other thing that was asked through is, like, what's the hardest to find Saleen parts?
Well, I mean, that's fairly easy. I think the hardest parts are the wear items. You can find wheels, you can find stuff. Typically, worst case, a wheel's bent, you send it off and get it fixed and get it repainted. But if you're looking for Recaro material for a 93 Saleen, or you're looking for flow fit material for an early car, you're just not going to find it. And if you do find it, and you find a little bit of it, yeah, you might find enough to fix the piece of your car, but it isn't going to match the rest of the car. So now you're stuck. And there's companies that have, or that upholstery people, I should say, that have found stuff that's pretty close, but it's not exactly the same.
No, and it's one that aficionados can spot right away that it's been recovered, especially if the recovering was not done well. That's the stitching and that kind of thing.
The colors are all off and everything else. I mean, if you're at going to your local cruise and no one's going to notice, but if you take it to a Saleen National show or Carlisle or one of the other bigger shows, then somebody's going to go, well, that looks nice, but it's been redone. I mean, and again, and that's fine if you're buying a 150,000 mile car that you want to build a motor for and have some fun with it. But if you found a 20,000 mile car that sat out in the sun in Arizona and you're buying it for the miles and the originality, you have to consider something like that with the seats.
Yeah, and I think that depends on what's your end goal. And I said that previously. What is your end goal? Where do you want to be? Are you looking for a collector vehicle like what we're standing around here? Or are you looking for something like you said, I want to modify it, I want to have some fun with it? Because if you're going to spend a lot of money to get something like this and modify it, you're only going to shoot yourself in the foot as far as values, because these are cars that you don't modify.
Well, I always try to tell people, I had a modification shop for many years. I always tell people that there's plenty of cars that have already been modified or aren't maybe pristine that you could take and turn into your dream fun car to have fun with. But it doesn't make a lot of monetary sense to buy something that's a pristine car and take all the parts up of it. Oh, well, I'm going to save them all. I'm never going to sell the car. I've heard that 1,000 times. And then you get into it, you built the car, you've got $50,000 in this car that now, for some reason, isn't fun to drive. Or now the cars are worth a bunch of money, and you go to sell the car, and you have all the original parts. Well, there's an expense in putting all that stuff back on again, too. So there's a lot of people that don't want to tackle that, just the same as somebody that doesn't want to buy a restoration project, they want to buy a nicer car.
Well, I think you said putting it back on the car. Some people go with the thought that, oh, I'll just give everything to the new owner. Well, a lot of times the new owner, they don't want to have, they
don't
want to
have the ability to do it.
Yeah, they don't want to pay to have it done, they don't have the ability to have it done, they just want to buy the car.
And you're worried that it's missing parts. I mean, I've bought a few cars in boxes, everything's there, and sure enough, it's missing a bunch of stuff.
You could go onto YouTube and watch that all day long with all kinds of barn finders, things that are missing.
Exactly.
In the boxes, oh, it's all there. But it hardly ever.
The key is if you're happy with it, that's great. But if you're already on a tight budget and you're buying something, just be wary of, I always look at when I'm buying something personally, what's the exit strategy? If something happens with the economy, something happens personally, and I need to sell this, what can I get out of it in order to try to make myself whole again?
It's funny, you said exactly what I said in the previous video. That I said I'm never going to sell it. Attitude, and the thing is that there's always a day. There's always a day, whether it's after you pass away or whether it's because hard times come to you.
And it happens. I don't care how much money you have. We've gone and dealt with buying collections from people that were very well off, and something turned the wrong way, and next thing you know, the toys have to go.
That's the first thing you know. So it's always something to consider.
Yep.
But, that's really it. I think that's pretty much the common thread. It's pretty much. I just wanted your affirmation.
Well, and I get asked that question all the time. And, you try to be, nice and diplomatic because sometimes people don't want to listen. But I can't tell you the amount of times I've gotten that, I should have done this, I should have done that. Well, how did you know that? Because I've been in that movie before and I've made that mistake and I wouldn't go back and do it again.
Yeah.
And it comes with gray hair and age, or lack of hair and young age. But yeah. You learn from your mistakes. And people always ask me, how do you know this, how do you know that? Well, because I screwed something up, and now I know I don't want to do that again.
Well, you've mentioned people try to take the Foxes, or even a 60s Mustang, and they try to make it handle like a modern car. And the end result is not necessarily what the owner imagined. And then they end up wanting to sell it, because it's like, you know what, I thought it was going to be something great, and it's not. I still get nervous in traffic. But I'm never going to sell it. You got to make a business decision, at least at some point. Mark, thanks. I really appreciate your time. Thanks for having us here. And stay tuned for more of individual coverage of each of these vehicles. We're trying to get as many in as we can because we only have so much time because this man's so busy. We got to get as many cars in the next couple of days. So thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, everybody.
Peace.